Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalomia. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Creating your company culture is an important step on your way to profitability. Remember, either you create the culture or someone else does. If you are clear on what you want, you can hire to your culture. Remember, it's a lot easier to hire people who believe in what you believe than to try and convert them. Listen in today as Chris talks about how he did that and what the outcomes are. He, like all business owners, has to deal with turnover, and he needs employees who can think and solve problems in the field. He had to create the systems and processes that allowed that to be scalable. Our guest today is Chris Lalomia. He is a successful entrepreneur and change leader that has built on his experience working with the largest companies in America to start his own business from scratch. He brings his unique style of leadership to build a culture of professionalism to the blue-collar world of home renovations. He left the corporate zoo and ventured into the entrepreneurial wild and started the Trusted Toolbox, home repair and projects in 2008. Yes, he started a business right before the Great Recession. So timing the market is not his strength. He survived through that time and has grown his business into a multi-million-dollar handyman and remodeling company, which has won numerous awards in Atlanta, Georgia. Let's meet our guest. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Chris Lalomia. It's great to have you join us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks again, Rocky.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Well, I'm a corporate refugee. I left the corporate zoo 13 and a half years ago after being an engineer and a consultant with banks, and I decided to start my own business. Decided to start a business that couldn't get outsourced, so I started a handyman business, which has grown into a handyman remodeling business here in the metro Atlanta area. Today, I've got 25 employees, and we do everything from bath and kitchen remodeling to that punch list around the house. I've recently just started another business called the Home Service Institute because I realized after 13 years in business, I'm really not doing the remodeling or renovation work anymore. I'm doing the training. And so I realized that customer service training for home service providers is critical because the customer experience is becoming even more important in our world than sometimes even the quality of the work we complete. So that's a little bit about me here in North Metro Atlanta, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you a little more.
So we're here today to kind of learn some of the lessons you've learned along the way and how to help our listeners to, at the end of the day, be more profitable. How do we fix that bottom line? One of the things that you talked to me about was that you have learned a lot of lessons from building a business plan. And that's kind of the step most business owners skip. They go, hey, we're in construction. I build X or I put in bathrooms. What do I need a business plan for?
It's a great point. I actually recently published a book called From the Zoo to the Wild, and I had a whole chapter around the business planning. And I felt at the time I was doing it really well. So I've got a lot of lessons learned about things I did well, but man, I screwed up a lot too. So in the business plan, I didn't use it to have the perfect A paper. I didn't have it to have every I dotted and every T crossed because that's really hard to do. I did it so I could have pointed, detailed questions answered by people who were smarter than me and already in the business. So I felt a good job getting it out there and getting that done. Some of the mistakes I made, and the biggest one is I didn't share my pro forma with a lot of people because I was afraid they were going to steal my great idea of becoming a handyman company. Because in corporate America, right, we keep our stuff close to the vest unless we want to share it with somebody for fear of being either copied or taken out of a position. So if you're asking me one thing to do, well, number one, do the business plan. And when you do the business plan, find people who are going to read it with you and give you pointed, great feedback and share that pro forma so somebody can go, I think you've lost your mind. There's no way you can break even in 16 months, which is what I kept thinking when I first started my business back in 2008. And sure enough, it took me 26 months.
That's still pretty good, 26 months, especially if you have to buy a lot of equipment and do that. But that's one of the things. Whatever you think it's going to take time-wise, I tell everyone double it. Because on average, that is the reality of what it takes. Twice as long to start the business, twice as long to get a customer, twice as long to complete those first projects as you expected. And that's kind of where we all get in trouble.
Yeah, I think if somebody were willing and able to talk to you about business plans with your background, you absolutely would start with the pro forma and what you're going to do, because you would be able to go, well, what are you thinking? Because I had somebody tell me, if you would have came to me, I would have said, take your revenue expectations and I want you to put them in half. Take your expenses and I want you to double them. Can you still live? And I heard that, of course, 2 or 3 years ago. And had I done that, I probably would have went, oh, need another idea.
And that's very true. I mean, the biggest thing that we like to do is to reverse engineer the process. In other words, okay, you want to deliver this product at this price. What are all the inputs that go into it? What are all the things that you have to cover? And then we come back and we say, is this going to work or are you going to lose money? And the biggest thing we're looking for is big margins. Because if you're tight to margin at the end of that, one hiccup and you're done. And let's face it, everyone faces a lot of hiccups. So the bigger that reverse engineering margin becomes, the more you know that you can screw up a little and still survive and thrive. And there's a lot of times we'll look at a business plan and within 20 minutes, we're like, go find something else. As a matter of fact, now there are certain business plans that I almost, just you telling me what you're going to do, I already know that you're going to struggle because everyone in the industry is fighting over what little business they're in and they don't have pricing power, which is massive, and that's where they struggle. If you do, and that's the other thing I think businesses are afraid, especially a new one, to charge what they need to charge to get the margins they knew. They're like, why would anyone pay me this? This is crazy. It only took me so much time to do it. Doesn't make sense. But yet the reality of it is you have to.
Yeah, you're hitting it on the head. When I first started the home services business, especially in the handyman and remodeling, the margins are tight. And this is not a high net margin business. And you need people to do the job and you need to use products. And people are getting even more savvy today about being able to see how much the products that you're buying are being charged at. So being able to mark them up without you providing a value structure of explaining to them, yes, I need to mark up my materials because we need time to get them. We need time to source them. We're using our expertise to get the right materials. And then we're using our skills, tools, and time to deliver this. And you're exactly right. In the beginning, I was charging too little for the expertise we were bringing. Did I deserve to charge more at that time? A little bit more. But today, after being at this for 13 years, we do charge what I would consider the premium for the service we provide and how we do it. But we do that by differentiating ourselves and making ourselves unique and getting out of the commodity of just finding the neighbor's friend from next door to come on down and do some work in my house.
And that's a big deal. So you are in an industry that can be commoditized, and you've chosen not to be, showing that it's possible. And then by doing that, you do get higher margins and figure it out. Now, one of the things I know, especially your area, and a lot of businesses have been hit by this, is not paying attention during COVID. And what I mean by that is a 2x4 went from $2 to $10. And if you did not pay attention to that, you were in serious trouble. And so you have to be aware of making sure that you're up to date on what it's really costing you.
The material and supply chain issues, we're here in 22, probably will sit with us for at least the rest of this year in terms of what's happening. But I can't stress that enough. I learned another lesson in COVID that was taught to me. When it first came around and first reared its head and said, hey, we're going to shut down the world with this, I was prepared, and I cut quickly and I cut deeply in my company and thinned us down and really were able to survive. Now here in Georgia, we opened back up by Memorial Day, and we were back up and running as a handyman company with remodeling lagging very severely because nobody wanted you in their house then. Now we're kind of enjoying the remodeling boom of people wanting to fix up their house because they can't travel. So that's been good. So you're right, paying attention and being able to react and get your cost structures in place so you can continue to survive are critical. And I can't tell you, that was my idea. Somebody gave it to me, and thank God it happened because it helped me not only survive, but thrive during COVID.
And I think that's one of the things people need to know, that you can thrive during COVID in a business such as yours. You don't have to be Zoom or some tech company or Amazon or one of those, but everyone can thrive during these times if you think about what you're doing and take action.
Yeah, I agree completely. It was having that discipline to take the action. I mean, it was tough to write it down, and it was tough to get yourself out of option A, which is we're going to stay closed down for a whole year, and start to think about the fact that option B is you're going to start to open back up, and you probably can keep working. Well, should I add more staff? Should I bring everybody back? All those questions. And no doubt about it, the PPP funding at the time, once I got it, helped me make these decisions a lot clearer. But if you remember back to that time, it was really hard to make those decisions when you're staring at, let's face it, I mean, it was, if they call it the pandemic, I would have said apocalypse before this, but now we say, when you're staring at it, you didn't know. You just didn't know.
So question, you deal with the skills trades, and clearly labor is difficult these days. So how are you able to navigate that and keep yourself with a full staff?
Acquiring talent right now is the hardest it's ever been for me. I am actually trying Facebook ads, Instagram ads. I'm on ZipRecruiter. I'm spending, I even tried a recruiter for a while that found us some. So right now, finding the skilled trades is really hard, and the hardest it's ever been. And it's always been difficult because these guys do view themselves as artists. They do view themselves as gig economy workers. And by a gig, I mean, think about the guy who's at your local bar playing the guitar on Saturday night. That's a gig. He got paid for his gig. Does he know when his next gig is? Maybe not. Maybe he does, but he'll figure it out. So when I attract guys to my company, you are a W-2 employee. I invite them into what we call our wolf pack. You were a lone wolf. You're on your own as a skilled artist. Come into our wolf pack and you'll have more security, and you'll have a better time doing what you love to do, and that's working on people's homes and creating great artwork. So the finding them is hard, and I'm finding that across every industry right now, clearly.
And that's what I'm hearing too. Once you hire them, how do you train them to deliver the work in a way that that works for your business, because you can't have all these lone wolves running around doing things their own way. You've got to come up with a good process of, hey, this is how we do X, because we know it works, it's profitable, and we can't have you do it one way and the next guy do it another way, and then the third guy comes to fix it and nobody knows what happened.
That's a great question. I have found that the onboarding of the gig economy worker is critical. And so what we do is we have them come work with us for a day and see if they like us and we like them. And then after that, they sit with me for an hour and a half. Now, these guys are not classroom learners, right? They're not going to sit here and listen to this podcast. They're not going to sit there and listen to me go on and on and on, or go to college or do all that stuff, because they're experiential learners, they're hands-on, and that should not be diminished at all, by the way. And I still feel like it is blue collar. It's still a great, successful career path. But I do bring them in and I talk about our culture, and I talk about why our culture and what they can do in our culture with the mission plaque we have in place on a mission statement can help them hit their own personal and professional goals. And for the first time ever, they're thinking of themselves as a professional and having personal goals. And by doing that, we invite them in and then say, here's our deal. What we have done is we are a checklist-driven company now, and we use an onboarding checklist, and then we have a day in and day out checklist. Prepare for the job, start the job, do the job, complete the job. 4 different checklists that they have to follow. Do they follow them 100%? Well, guys, we all know, not true. But is it a lot better than it was when I first started with no checklist? Absolutely. I wouldn't be 4.6 rated at Google with over 500 reviews, which is 250 reviews more than any of my competitors here in the Atlanta area. I wouldn't be rated like that if we didn't have it.
How did you create your checklists?
Great question. I actually used a book, the Checklist Manifesto, and it was geared, the Checklist Manifesto was geared for pilots and, it was geared to explain the process, but checklists are used by pilots, by doctors, and by skyscraping builders. They used the anecdotes and explained it. One of the things he talked about was, you as the owner can't develop the checklist. You have got to get a group together of invested employees and decision makers to make it. So I did that process for over a month with my scheduler, my quality assurance manager, and 2 of my key technicians. And I let them come up with a checklist. And then, of course, I gave it the blessing, but I let them develop it.
And I was talking to one of my clients and he said, we've got to standardize this. And they said, if I bring all these people into the room, I'll get 10 different answers.
Oh, don't get me wrong. It wasn't easy for me to give that up and do it. And I make it sound like I sat back and just empowered them. All right, little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, I got involved. Yeah, I gave them some suggestions. But our checklists are very short. It's 10 to 12 items per category. It doesn't make them a better handyman or remodeler or a better craftsman. It just helps them reset themselves and do things the way I want them done, that allows them the opportunity to be more successful and professional, to hit, again, their personal and professional goals.
Now, you said you don't know how well they utilize them.
I can't tell you that they're sitting in their truck when they're done and they're going through every single item. I can tell you that their performance is rated not only on the customer surveys, but the reviews that go out there. And in our checklist, it's ask for a review, ask for feedback. So I know they're using that. And I know they're using other items, because one of the items and one of the areas we had a lot of problems with in the beginning was calling your customer 30 minutes ahead of your intended appointment time. They just weren't following you. I would say, guys, you got to keep doing this. Guys, you got to call. Guys, you got to call. Sure enough, 9 o'clock, I'm in the office, picking up my phone, going, hello, how can I help you? And the customer's asking, hey, is your guy on his way? I'm like, oh, brother. So now we have a checklist. We don't get those calls anymore. Do we occasionally? We do. Do they hear about it? They do. And do they know that that probably cost them the potential tip? They do. And that's how you get them to stay and adhere to it. Is that, look, these guys followed the process and the checklist. And look, they made bonus this month. Look, they got 5 reviews this month. Look. And one of the guys will say, yeah, I got over $600 in tips this month alone.
When you say tips, is it the client giving the tip? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we're in a business where if you do it right, people still will tip you. And I know you're asking yourself, should I tip anybody who comes into my house? That's a personal question for you to answer. I can't tell you. I didn't realize it happened as much until I got out in the business and started doing it. Where this lady said, well, I got to give you a $20 tip. I'm like, that's okay, ma'am. I'm the owner. And she literally ran down the driveway, crumpled up the $20 bill and threw it in my truck and said, you're getting that $20. I'm like, all right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, that's good. And I guess I never thought of the trades getting tips, but I guess
it happens.
It depends.
And I tell you, that's a great reward for those guys. And we talk about that. Just a quick one. When you offer a bottle of water to a tradesman coming into your house, that costs you 25 cents. But in your mind, you offered gratitude and you gave them what you would consider a tip. I tell my guys to refuse that bottle of water, never use the bathroom, show yourself as a professional. You have to give respect to earn respect. And at the end, they actually might reach in their wallet or their purse and give you that $20. So would you rather have a 25-cent bottle of water or $20 in your pocket?
I guess it depends if it's 90 degrees and you're working outside, right?
Well, I tell them pack their own. Yep, pack their own.
Plan ahead, pack your own. And I'm a big fan of checklists. I mean, I as much as I can put checklists together, it's not even the thing that it helps me with is I no longer have to think when I do something. I just follow the checklist. And so it removes so much mental space or mental usage, and it allows me to just focus on what I need to do. And the more checklists or the more things that I have tasked out, the easier it is and the more productive I become. And so whenever I look around, that is the one thing that I consistently work on. Actually, just the other day, I used checklists for the podcast. And I just recently realized, there's a lot of things on this checklist that aren't perfect anymore. And there's all this extra garbage. I'm like, I'm going to redo my checklist today. And I rebuilt it. And so going forward, I'll have a slightly better checklist to work off of. And it just makes it easier.
I love that you said that because I've started my own podcast as well, the Small Business Safari. We didn't have a checklist. First time I go and it was just me and a co-host talking, I forgot to hit record. And the intern was working with me saying, hey, didn't you talk about having checklists at the Trusted Toolbox? I went, yes, I should probably do what I say I do. So you're right. By God, if I can have a checklist in the Trusted Toolbox, I can have one to do a podcast. But what you said is exactly right. It takes the mental Olympics, if you will, or gymnastics to get the podcast started. Now you can get over there and think about content, where you can think about how you're going to have this conversation go better. So I'm a big fan of the checklist. It really helped us out. It was Checklist Manifesto. His last name is Gawande. I don't have the book with me because I just lent it out to one of my employees.
One of the things I heard say the other day is you can't teach a work ethic, right? They come with it or they don't. How do you determine through your screening and interview process whether or not you've got somebody who's going to show up every day, or especially in the trades? This is what I hear. Well, 50% of the time, my guy doesn't show up.
Well, I don't have the answer for how to screen for it. So if somebody listening to this does, you can hit me up at chris@thetrustedtoolbox.com because I need help. But with our onboarding process, we find that they opt out very quickly if this is not the right culture for them. Because in my business, the guys who do the best here do hustle. They are not the guys who want to sit there in the janitor's room hoping that they don't get a call because they're on the clock for the hour and they don't have to do any work. So identifying it early is hard, but seeing it quickly with our onboarding and our training, because we also do training consistently every other Wednesday. And you'll see if they're buying in during that 1 hour training class.
So you said you created a culture that is part of. When you talk to business owners, do you find many of them create the culture, or does the culture get created?
I think the culture gets created, as the short answer. I heard a great line. You have a culture in your company, whether you know it or not. And I think a lot of us have blind spots on what our true culture is. Meaning, are these the kind of people that can bring a problem to you and know that you're not going to shut them down and tell them they're idiots and tell them that they can't solve their own problem and you're going to solve it? Do you have a culture where every problem they get, they have to bring to you to solve? Do you have a culture of problem solvers? Do you have a culture of go-getters? Do you have a culture of people who are actually in it to win it with you and part of a high-functioning team? I don't have all of that. I'd love to tell you I did. I'd be lying if I told you I have it all. But I've been very intentional in the culture we built to make sure that my lone wolves out there in the field are problem solvers. Because if I choke them down too much and I make them domesticated dogs, when he's sitting at your house and then you come up to him and say, hey, I'm not sure that was the right color. Can we talk about it? He says, I don't know, let me call the office and find out. Well, why didn't he solve the problem for you right there on the spot? It was just a color question. So our lone wolves are incented to go out there and make it happen for their customers.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's kind of shift gears a little. One of the things that you talk about is it's not just your why, but where will you thrive? So what did you mean by that?
It's not just your why. I feel like it was a great concept. I do believe in it. I think it's a great one from Simon. But where are you going to thrive? Meaning, where are you going to find your passion in my business to get to 25 employees? That means I can get to a certain revenue size. I can't have robots. I can't offshore this overseas. I can't do this remotely. I have got to build a team of employees and people. And you got to love leadership to do what I'm doing and love seeing other people solve problems together and solve those problems for customers. And that's where I thrive, is watching these guys solve big, hairy problems as a team. So I found where I thrive is more exciting for me, and I can actually do more. Because in our business, again, I always joke, the next business I start will have no employees and no customers, and I'll be thrilled. But the truth is, I do enjoy it, and that's where you find your thrive. And hopefully it's coming across in the podcast. I'm very passionate about the leadership and the culture that we built here of that kind of a group.
And so now you've taken that excitement and you actually have an institute to help others learn how to do this in the home services business. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I realized about 4 years ago, I was in the training business, as I mentioned earlier, and I sat back and turned over the training to my operations manager at the time. And I would sit back and watch what he did. And then we started to develop it. And then somebody said, wow, you're really in the training business. I'm like, this training needs to go to all the skilled trades out there. Electricians, plumbers, HVAC, window washers, window installers, floor refinishers, floor cleaners, whatever. You're working in people's houses. So in our training, what we provide with the Home Service Institute is that we say you should have 3 components with all training to these lone wolf artists. 1, customer service and purpose. 2, something about your operational processes that you want to get across, whether it be a checklist or our guys all use tablets today. But lastly, you got to give them something technical that makes their life or their job easier. Meaning, hey, this new tool just came out from Milwaukee Tool. Let's go demonstrate and see if this is something you guys want to purchase. By keeping it light, keeping it live and upbeat, keeping it to a 1 hour, twice a month program has been effective for us. So the Home Service Institute can provide the structure and training to help you provide this to your own teams. And we can do as little as providing the videos and the talking points for service managers and owners to develop the first part of this. So we deliver the first third. We got your customer service. We'll help you with the why and the purpose. You have the operational processes already up in your head that you want to do. And figure out something technical. So if you're in HVAC, you know that Train and Lennox are going to give you something. If you're in electrical, you know that Square D or any of the number of these guys are going to come back, Generac, and tell you more about their product. And so by sticking with all that and doing this on a consistent basis, you start to provide that framework and you start to build that culture from a 1 hour training session. That, by the way, I totally resisted in the beginning. This is going back 10 years ago because I didn't want to take my guys out of the field for an hour. And now I found that my utilization rate's higher. My average tenure of my employee went from 7 months to 2 years. And a metric that I use, which is called add-on sales. This is work where you would have came up to them and asked them if they do some other stuff in the house where they used to go, I don't know, call the office, they'll call you back. Now I have them sell it, and they get a little bump if they can do it. I went from almost zero to something that was worth 10% of my top line, all sold by technicians in the field. And so that's a lot different than the HVAC and electrical and plumbing fields, because a lot of these guys are incented that way in companies to work that way. But in my world of handyman and remodeling, we're not incented that way. So it was a unique way to do it. But that's the long story in the Home Service Institute. I'm sure I rambled on way too long, but you can see my passion.
And that is perfectly fine. As you mentioned earlier, you do have a podcast as well. What have you learned from your podcast, and what are some of the big ahas that have come out of it?
All right. Number one, I did this to help get the Home Service Institute word out there. But what I've found is it's helped me in my own business, because I get to hear so many other great ideas coming back at me, or somebody will ask me a question and I'll answer and go, wow, I got to put that in my own business. But I've learned a number of things. I'll give you just a quick one. When I started mine 13 years ago, the internet has been around, but we realized the internet has moved fast. When I first started, you had to use things to advertise called Valpak, Money Mailer, or print. And I was smart enough to not even get in the phone book. But remember, it used to be phone book. In today's world of digital marketing, the way you can do the digital marketing, you should see returns within 90 days. And if it's not working, stop. Don't ever sign a 12-month contract with anybody anymore when it comes to digital marketing, because in 90 days, you should know whether or not it worked. And that came from a marketing person who came on the podcast. And I'm implementing that in my own business. You're right. Didn't sign a 12-month contract with anything digital. I only sign a yearly contract with print media now.
Any other insights?
Yeah, geez, I could just keep going on and on. So the other things I've learned from that is, obviously there's a lot of really smart people out there who can really help you with things. I use the DISC profile to identify good potential candidates, but more importantly, I do it to help me with communication style inside the business. We also use the DISC profile in our sales process. I have 5 estimators, and we use the DISC profile to identify customers and to identify the 4 quadrants and see who we're dealing with. We brought on Jim Ryerson, a sales professional who actually helped me develop my own sales process. And that actually just dropped in January. But his insight into where sales is going was so spot on. So 13 years ago, I'd have to be a gregarious, outgoing salesperson who also educated you on the details. Today's world, people don't want to hear glib salespeople because they've already gotten the details from their internet. Your job is to reinforce what they heard on the internet, right or wrong, and give them detailed answers back. And then from those detailed answers, they'll decide whether or not to go with you. So today's salespeople actually don't have to be the copier salespeople going door to door, trying to get you and convince you and strong arm you into something. You have to be a thoughtful, more disciplined salesperson. And so I've actually really embraced that idea, because I went back and looked at some of the guys I have. One of my best sales guys in the DISC profile is introverted.
You can be introverted and sell.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people, especially if you grew up in a sales environment, would say, that just doesn't work. You know, introverted people don't sell cars. Well, I'm here to tell you, introverted people can sell handyman services and remodeling, because the details have already been fleshed out by the customer.
Have you heard of the book, They Ask You Answer?
Yes. Huge fan. Marcus Sheridan.
Yep.
Using video. Yep. I love that. We're actually implementing a number of his ideas, including our new remodeling process will start with a video before we ever go out there. And we're going to do what Marcus said. I'm going to try it in my own business. If you didn't watch our video or review our documents before the estimate, we're not going to come out. We don't want to waste your time, and we don't want to waste our time. So we're literally going to implement that in the next 30 days. And that's a very scary proposition for me. On the handyman side, I'll still do free estimates and get out there. But on the remodeling side, if you didn't take the time to educate yourself and you're not there, then I'm not the glib sales guy who can tell you to buy this mattress. I got to be the detail guy who tells you this is what a $30,000 or $40,000 bathroom looks like. So yeah, I'm a big fan of his video and the asking the questions and answering those questions.
As am I. So if people would like to learn more about your training company, your podcast, the other places, how do they find you?
Yeah, I got a lot, but I'll break it down. You can always email me, Chris@thetrustedtoolbox.com. Happy to talk with anybody. I'm on LinkedIn, Chris Lalomia. I'm on Instagram. I'm the customerservice.freak on Instagram. The homeserviceinstitute.com is where our training is. And also my book's out there called Zoo to Wild, if you want to look into that on Amazon. And our podcast is the Small Business Safari. So you get the theme, busting out of the concrete zoo and getting into the wild world of small business ownership.
Cool. And I will put that in the show notes to make it easier for people to find you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
All right, Rocky, I really enjoyed it. Thanks again for having me.
What actionable tips can you start to implement in your business based on this conversation today? Chris realizes he's in the training business. He has to help bring together people who tend to do things their own way into an organization and create standardization across all of them. Another tip, do your employees upsell for you? They can be one of your best salespeople if they are taught how to do it and they know how to ask the right questions. Remember, you don't need more resources, you need to be more resourceful. We focus on the bottom line. If you want a done-for-you service, you can have me as your Chief Profitability Officer because you have your zone of genius and want to spend your time doing what you love. I only work with a handful of clients, so they get my full attention. I work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $5 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on my calendar for a good fit conversation to see if I'm the right person to support you and how I can help you. If you want to learn about living the life of your dreams, check out my other podcast, Richer Soul. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.